and the Passover of the Jews up to Jerusalem. And he found in the temple those that sold oxen, and he sitting. And he made a scourge of cords, and cast all out the changers' money, and overthrew their tables. And to them he said, take these things hence, make not my Father's house. His disciples remembered that it was zeal for thy house shall eat me up. And that's a quotation from Psalm 9, verse 9. And as I recall from another part of the same verse, you've got a quotation in Romans 15, which is also applied to Christ, and it says, the reproaches he fell upon me. So you see, this is not that a man who is very zealous is just, he's eaten up with zeal. The thought here is the zeal for the house of God brings about his destruction. He's eaten up, he's consumed. And that reproach thee fell upon me is in that same context in Psalm 69. The Jews, therefore, what sign showest thou unto us, seeing that thou doest these things? Remember that he does this same thing, this cleansing of the temple, at the end of the ministry. In Mark, we saw it in the last week. And again, they were wanting to know by what authority does, and he gets into a controversy with them over that. Well, here at the beginning, the ministry started this way. Dost thou unto us, seeing that thou doest these things? Well, this already shows their attitude. A sign for what, something that they should have started doing a long time ago, and to come for cleaning up the temple and restoring it to its proper purpose. The cross cast a long shadow. We already see the fringes of that shadow back here in the beginning. So, you know, what he does here at the beginning of his ministry, it could be the beginning of a great reformation in which the nation goes back to God. But now what's going to happen? Are the rulers going to join him in that and support that kind of a reformation and a restoration and a return to God? Well, we already see it. And he sees it. They want a sign. All right, verse 19. Jesus answered and said unto them, destroy this temple, this sanctuary, the margin says, and in 3 days I will raise it up. The Jews therefore said, 46 years was this temple in building, and wilt thou raise it up in 3 days? But he spake of the temple of his body. When therefore he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he spake this, and they believed the scripture and the word which Jesus had said. Now again, a couple of points. To understand what Jesus is saying here, and to see the relation between his body and the temple, you have to recall the way this gospel began in the prologue. I called attention to chapter 1, verse 14, where it says, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, literally tabernacled, pitched his tent among us, and we beheld his glory. The glory of God had one time been manifested in the tabernacle. In Exodus 25, I have that scripture in here, 25:8. When Moses was given the order about the building of the tabernacle, God told him, have them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them. That's what that was. And then at the end of Exodus, chapter 40, when the tabernacle has been completed, then the glory of God is manifested. He takes up his dwelling in the tabernacle and manifests himself in a special way there. There's where his glory will dwell. So now we see, when we see God made flesh and tabernacling among the people, then you see what that tabernacle pointed to. That was just a shadow of a reality that was to come, that was to cast that shadow, where God manifested himself among men in human flesh. And so Jesus understands the significance of tabernacle and temple, and he shows that understanding in saying, destroying this temple. Now, standing here in the temple court, and they think of the temple, and he thinks of the temple, but also of the real significance of that temple as the place where God manifests himself. and the thing that really represents himself, God manifested among them, dwelling in human flesh. It's not surprising that they don't catch the connection. They haven't shown any sensitivity to what the temple was all about. Anybody that went into a bazaar, you could hardly expect them to understand what it was all about. And he thinks on one level, they think on another level. And we've got this all through the Gospel of John where this is the case.
I was just going to say, it just seems very evident that he had no intention of them understanding what he was saying until after his death, until after he died.
It would have required an unusual sensitivity to the significance of the temple, something that they had shown they didn't have. And even the disciples, do they catch on? Not at first, but what? When he rises from the dead on the third day, then the pieces begin to fall into place.
But I think that's what the real meaning of this thing was. Is that I think it was really for his disciples that he was saying this, knowing that they would understand at the time, at a given time, that they would understand and recall exactly what's happened. And it just seems like he had no intention of the Pharisees or the Sanhedrin understand what he was saying.
But when the event comes, it's all like the clouds have been stripped away and the statements showing us this thread of Jesus had said after the resurrection. They believed these things. So a deepening of faith. John's tracing out for us the conviction to be worked in the disciples.